Welcome to the #InvestThis podcast, where the secrets for real estate investing are revealed. Now, here's your host, Scott Bauer.
Welcome, everybody, to the 52nd episode of the #InvestThis podcast. I am your host, Scott Bauer, and today we got something pretty exciting. Actually, you're in for a treat today. I got Bilbro with GeoFlip on with me. We have a lot of information to go over about the changing technology out there. And Bilbro, how you doing, man?
I'm good, man. It's, you and I know each other quite well, and it's cool to be in a professional setting and actually do some work. So it's cool to be here.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being here. And I guess, why don't you give the listeners a little bit more about your background and kind of what you're focused on now? Give them a little heads up for what they're going to hear on this call.
Sure. You want me to go into my bio per se or not so much?
Give a little brief synopsis of the bio, kind of a little bit of your background, how you got to where you're at, and then we'll transition into, what you're focused on now and how you're blowing it up.
Okay, cool. So I think the background, it helps. It makes some sense because I got my start. I was born in Texas, but I kind of grew up in Albuquerque, and I went to college in Albuquerque where I got a degree I got one in chemistry, one in biology, and then actually a minor in biochemistry. And the only reason why I kind of start there is because what I did not know at that time, I was a sheep, which you and I have talked about, and all my friends and fraternity brothers were going to go to medical school. And so I was just following what the masses were doing, and medical school was not a dumb option at that time. But what I did not know is that I just had somewhat of a propensity or a proclivity, if you will, to understand and desire data and math. But it didn't really show up then. It was just there. So then for the next 10 years, I was a Series 7, about 9 years, I should say. I was a Series 7 licensed stockbroker. I worked with New York Life and Not Securities, which was a Fortune 100 company. They were number 60-something at the time. So that was kind of a big deal to get a good job, a good opportunity with a big company. We're at a little old Albuquerque, New Mexico, right out of the gates, right out of college. I had been declined, or rejected, I should say, from applying to medical school twice. It's kind of hilarious now. I really was upset that there was like class actions they didn't want to let white guys into medical school, and that's a true thing. Now today, there's literally a lawsuit. I think it's like, I don't know who it is, but the Japanese, the Chinese, somebody's suing Harvard because you have to have higher scores to get into Harvard because they discriminate the other way because you got to be smarter to get into Harvard. I think that's just so funny. Anyways, for 10 years, I did that. In about 2006, I moved to Scottsdale, Arizona, and I started flipping in, I think, 2008 or 9. I think my first flip was 09, but I started studying in 08. And that's kind of the background. I went through a pretty fantastic economic default. I thought I was the smartest person in the whole world, which I'm sure many people on this call have been in a position where they really thought they were making smart decisions. And then some years later, they realized that they didn't understand how debt works. A few years later, they didn't understand how leverage works. They didn't understand what bubbles were or how to recognize them. So I got thrown into cold water learning the hard way with all those things. And so I thought I was a smart cookie at age 28 or 29. I had about, 5 or 6 properties, a fourplex or 2. I had a big house on the mountain. I built a custom home, a $600K home. I bought a $700,000 or $600,000 house here. I share all that just because within 24 months, it was all gone. And man, it was gone in spectacular fashion. Like the banks come and get that stuff. And they know how to get it too. And so I had to start from zero. And in about 2009 or so, I was at zero and started flipping and did my very first deal in 09.
So, that's an important part right there to just kind of back up the train, because it's really important for, I guess, the listeners and the people out there to really understand what you just said, right? Understanding how debt works, understanding how, you're living the dream. This is pre-fall, right, to the market. So this is before 2009, but you're living large, man. You got flips going on, you got houses, you got fourplexes, you got money coming in, but I'm sure they were high leverage. Would you say that's true?
Absolutely.
And at the time,
so was the BMW M3, Mr. Bowers.
So, but that's easy, right? When money's easy to get, and I would even argue right now, it's very easy to find cash out there right now. And so you just got to be careful because the same thing's coming again, right? history will repeat itself. And so maybe that's a good time to just kind of transition into how can the listeners protect? You know, if you're out there and you're doing deals right now and you've had a good couple of years and the market's been hot, so you've just been crushing it. I know myself included, since I've been in the investment space, everything has been great, but that's going to change. And so how do you protect yourself? Talk to the listeners for a second about that.
You know, I think one of the smartest things that I didn't know I was doing, but it happened, and it sounds cliche and it sounds easy, but we always think we can do things ourselves, and so we try to do them ourselves, and that's fine. You got to have some go-getter attitude. But there's a piece of the decision-making in business that I think you really shouldn't do yourself, and it's the architectural or strategy-level decisions, because those are the ones that if you don't know what you're doing, those are the ones that get you into the deepest hole. So that's where you need the mentors. That's where you need the experienced people. That's where you need somebody who's got 10 or 20 years on you, or who's gone through a market cycle or two. And also, here's something else I've learned. It helps to know that the person made their money in a similar form or fashion or environment that you're in, because industries sometimes just don't translate. My dad's a dentist, and when the economy hit, my dad had no clue and still has no clue, because a guy who's a 30-year-old dentist or dentistry for 30 years who's got good patients, he had no idea. It didn't even matter. He lost zero revenue, zero patients, zero. I mean, it was not even a thing to him. Yet here in Phoenix, Arizona, the whole world was minus 50% asset value. So anyways, it's important to get, I think, older or more experienced people at the architectural level to help point you in some directions and to keep you out of harm's way. If I would have had that, I think here's what would have happened, and I do believe this is what would have happened. I wouldn't have listened to my mentor anyways if I would have had him. If my mentor would have said, don't get a bunch of leverage in debt because it's just a bad idea, I was so headstrong I wouldn't have done it. So, and I now know that about myself. Now I've got lots of advisors. I've got lots of people I listen to, and 60-year-old people with gray hair who've gone through 3 of these market cycles. I've got a dozen of those guys that I talk to, and women. You have to be close to them. They've seen it before.
So I think that's really, really important, just to reiterate again that coaches and mentors and people that have been there, done that ahead of you, or have achieved what you're trying to achieve before you, have gone through cycles, et cetera, is a really important piece to have on your team. I've talked about this multiple times in other episodes of the podcast here, that I'm a major product of coaching and mentorship from people that have been there and done that. So, you know, those of you out there that are wondering about coaches or thinking about getting one, or I would highly recommend it. And I think Bilbro would as well. And
you're a walk the walk kind of guy. I mean, I got to know you better at a mastermind, and you live in my city.
Right. Right.
You live down the street, 10 minutes. And the most time I ever got with you was in San Diego. Right. And that was because we sat down and we said, hey, this is business. We're next door neighbors practically. And we're the same guy. And that just, I saw you were there with your game face on, man. You're not there to party. I mean, and that's cool. Partying's fun too, but you were there to like have fun and absorb and help. And so, yeah, it's obvious. Well,
I think that people in general and the listeners out there, because if you're listening to this, that means you're somebody who's information hungry as well. You're wanting to learn and understand more about the market, how to get better. And so you must do that in order to succeed in any business venture that you're in, period. Doesn't matter. And, I would say really in anything that you really want to excel at. It doesn't even have to be business. If you want to be a absolute CrossFit trainer and be at the, go to the CrossFit games and do all of that, you have to be at the elite level. And kind of like what you had mentioned earlier when we talk about sheep and wolves, you and I have discussed this, and we'll get into the major point here in a minute, but I want to go on this tangent for a second, because you and I have discussed how we are in a world filled with sheep, and you have to be the wolf. And what happens, there are prices that you pay when you're the wolf. A couple of those things is, you're working when other people are partying. Yeah. Your friends list is probably a lot smaller than other people. You're giving up sacrifices where other people aren't. And that's just the reality of being a wolf, because we're out there to get things done. And I think it's crazy when you start to look around at the world and realize all of the different types of sheep that are out there surrounding us all the time. You really got to watch your back, right?
Well, to that point, I think I'm seeing something else to go along with that analogy. Well, I'm not sure if it's with the analogy. It's just I'm seeing that there is a difference of an inability to recognize signal from noise. And, it's easier said than done. I'm sure there's lots of noise that I'm myself confused by, and I'm unable to see the signal within the noise. But the sheep, the sort of do what my neighbor is doing and follow what those guys are doing, to the sheep, the sheep analogy. Something that has happened to me recently, I think, and it's happened to my whole team, is we've just become better, if you will, at differentiating signal from noise, like what is real and what really works, and what does not work. And it's just not that challenging. In that, we just decided to become a data-driven company. So we don't really make any decisions unless we have, if we don't have data to substantiate the decision, then there has to be some really, truly compelling, well-known industry standard and or handful of reasons for us to go against the data. But around a year or so ago, is we just decided, hey, data's where it's going. And if you don't there's a phrase that I've been sort of using with myself, not to really anybody else, but my language is changing. So data governance. Data governance is where you use data to make decisions in spite of your gut. So your gut thinks one thing because you've got experience. You've been doing something for 10 years as an expert. I've been doing this for 10 years. I call myself an expert. But whether or not that's true or not is irrelevant. It's getting decisions right. And one of the things we've been getting better at is allowing data to be the tip of our spear, if you will, and to tell us where to go. What that has done is separated us from some of the sheep.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important point to make is when you're making decisions based on data, you can't argue with fact. Fact is fact. And so, using that data, you can make informed decisions, and you're not even really making informed decisions. You're just analyzing the data points and directing them to the success, whichever route is pointing towards success. So for the listeners, let's start to dive into what GeoFlip is and how you're kind of utilizing technology and data to further market to the right people in order to, succeed at business. Let's talk about that. That's a good shift.
Sure. So picking up kind of from where I left off on my bio, that's important because in 2009, I raised about $1.5 million. I had a good friend, a fraternity brother, who he had some good friends in Texas. And my good buddy Eric and his buddies, they were all commercial real estate developers, older than me and sophisticated and knew real estate. Didn't know anything about flipping, but they're commercial real estate developers. So they had money and they knew that I would be willing to go work my tail off and they would fund me. So they did. So for 2009 through 2013 or so, I'm not really sure, probably about 5 years, I was the buy, fix, and flip model. Had done 0 wholesales. And then it shifted. And there's reasons for that, but I don't need to get into that too much. But I love wholesale. I love buy, fix, and flip, but I really dislike construction. And I also recognize that construction, as most people know, is where a large percentage of the variables and the risk exist in the entire business model. So those who are good at construction should continue to do it. And I still do a buy, fix, and flip from time to time if the opportunity presents itself. But it's really something that I'd rather just not, because now it takes me away. So in the 2012-13 timeframe, I somewhat abandoned direct mail, and I was actually better at bandit signs than direct mail. I was never really good at either, but again, I would say I was good enough. Earning 6 figures in wholesale or in real estate in Phoenix, Arizona means you're doing something right. You have to be doing something right to kind of get to that mode, and I've been in that mode for a decade. But because construction was so stressful, I decided to go into wholesale. Well, wholesale, I quickly realized the different levers that exist. Construction goes away, and the need to raise capital essentially goes away. You never want to not do those things, but they're just not that important. But what comes on board is the complexity of marketing. And so at that time, I just happened to be lucky. A good friend of mine, a very good friend of mine at that time, but today one of my best friends, a gentleman by the name of Qasim Aslam. Now, Qasim, pronounced just like the word awesome. He's my business partner. A lot of my friends know him. I know you know him.
Yep.
He's the smartest digital marketer I've ever met on planet Earth, period. That's it. Done. He just is. Are there better digital marketers? Maybe. Have I met them? No. Have I met 1,000 digital marketers? Yes. I kind of have a good understanding of what makes for a good digital marketer. My business partner, Qasim, wrote a book, which is on Amazon, which I get it wrong every time. But it's something, I know Qasim's going to kill me when you hear this, but it's something like the 7 principles of effective digital marketing or something to that effect. I'm sure you'll throw a link at some people if you could do that. But he's a best-selling author on Amazon in digital marketing, and that's my business partner. He's the CEO of his digital marketing firm. He's also ranked I think he was ranked in top 10 by experience.com out of all digital marketing agencies in Arizona. There's 400 of them almost. So I tell you that because, I'm a real estate guy, but my business partner is Michael Jordan when it comes to digital marketing. So I've done some things for the business that are clearly helpful, but the secret sauce is my business partner. And anybody who doesn't understand that it really does take the upping of our game to compete in this world is just going to get eaten up. And I kind of knew that 5 years ago by leaving the antiquated direct mail bandit sign world and went into digital marketing. But it was because I did it with a guy that I knew, I trusted, I believed in, and he was as proficient as a person I could find. That took us 8 months. 8 months, we had made $0. Okay, so remember, we got to put this in context. For listeners, I think that they need to start to appreciate some of its complexity. I, at that time, was a real estate expert, and my partner at that time was a digital marketing expert. Yet 8 months later and $8,000 later, we both had zero. So here's two experts, scratching their head thinking, what's the deal? I don't have to go into that story too much, but the point is we finally got a deal. It was interestingly an $8,000 assignment. And ever since then, 5 years ago, we've been off to the races. So this system that is GeoFlip was built and birthed from me as a wholesaler specifically. So when we help other wholesalers with their marketing needs, truly nobody knows this product as well as me and my partner, because this is what put food on my table. Like, this is what created my tax returns, right? This is what produces millions of dollars for me, right? I've had this myself for years, and this thing has produced millions of dollars. Now we've actually licensed and leveraged this thing for other experienced real estate investors. So we created it for ourselves, and then now we're bringing this concept to others.
So, for all the listeners out there that are kind of wondering exactly what we're talking about. We're talking about marketing source, and we're talking about, I'm a direct mail guy. I have been forever. It is old, but it works. And as time goes on, that will wean out. That will all of a sudden go away. I'm pretty confident as time goes on, technology will trump, because that's how just life works. So Bilbro and I got together a few weeks ago and kind of started bringing this subject back up again on, what he's been working on, what I've been working on, and maybe being able to find a way where we can work with each other. And that's why I really wanted to bring him on the show, because I think that technology with finding good quality deals, and it could be in single family, and it probably could be in other areas too. You could probably find off-market commercial deals, multifamily. I mean, it could probably be applicable across the board, because it really comes down to your data points. So that's what you're finding. You're taking data out there, and you're being able to pinpoint where these good marketing channels might be, where you can find good off-market deals. Is that right?
Yeah, it's exactly right. And I also wanted to say, astute of you to recognize that your one trick that works so well, and you do it better than anybody I know. You're a direct mail sniper and machine all in one. But I too believe it's going to go away. And you to recognize that your thing is going to go away, it's amazing. This is one of the things I'm shocked that people can't do what you just did. See, people defend what they're most comfortable with, right? they understand it and they defend it and they're most comfortable with it. It's their status quo. But there are other people that really are thinking about the logistics. And what you just did, I think you're spot on. I don't think direct mail is going to die in the next 5 years. But in 15, I could see that.
Right. And you see how everything is going through technology. Even the U.S. Postal Service, a lot of it goes online, right? So although people like to read something, get something in the mail and read it, at some point, I think that mailboxes will go away. I think it's not going to make sense for people to pay an individual to drive around and deliver paper mail. I just don't feel like that's the reality of the life that we're in right now. So although I'm not stopping to do it today, I'm not going to stop direct mail tomorrow. I am going to look at taking a ship at doing other things so I can be prepared when that time does come, right?
Good, smart move. I think when the millennials become a larger section of home ownership, which who knows when because home ownership is also under attack, right? Everything is under a share model. Everything is VRBO, and I don't own a home. I travel the world. it's just things are changing, right? So direct mail, the idea of domiciling at a specific address, and when millennials own many of the homes, it's just direct mail is not going to work.
It's going to be totally different. So, let's go into more of the digital marketing. So I know in a couple of years ago, I spent like $50,000 trying to market online, and I just lost all my money. Basically, that's what it was. It was a waste of dollars because I think I probably put the marketing in the wrong hands, really.
Yeah.
And it didn't do anything for me. It didn't serve me. It wasn't, and so the taste I have in my mouth is, oh, that doesn't work.
Yeah.
Talk to the listeners about how you made it work. How is it that GeoFlip is ahead of the competition, and how could somebody really leverage it to find good quality deals?
Yeah. So let me first just answer that first question real direct, because this is one of the challenges that we've had as a company. And it's really not a challenge. What it is my company has been faced with what I call 1.0 dogma. It's just the old school way of doing it. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. We did something that I think it's significant, but it's also slight. We did something inside this niche that I'm going to label as innovate. It's not a huge innovation. We didn't cure cancer, but we did something that wasn't there before. And it's with my partner and myself. So we just built systems and technology and some software and some data, and we've just built some of our secret sauce. Our system, we think, is just, there's a fundamental difference. And mostly the fundamental difference is that we lead with data. So anytime we see any inefficiency, a hole in the data, anytime I see a hole in the data, it sticks out like a sore thumb to me. And I'm just like, well, why is that hole there? And a hole can be anything. It can be any sort of drop off inefficiency throughout the chain of business. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up one question about PPC doesn't work. You said you had spent $50K, and I assume, did you get 0 deals or did you get any deals?
I got one deal out of it, but it ended up being like a $7,500 deal. That was it. It was a small deal. I'd spent way more money in trying to acquire that damn thing.
Yeah. So the number one, and this is it's just so prevalent. The the most common answer I get from when somebody else did PPC or any digital marketing for that matter, and I ask how many deals or money did you make, by far the most common answer is 0. So you did 1, Scott, I'm telling you, that puts you in the upper quartile. Because I've talked to dozens and dozens, and I can only talk to most of the more experienced, because GeoFlip can only really help the more experienced flippers, people that are typically doing 50 deals a year. They've got a full acquisitions team, a marketing budget of at least 10, but 20, 30, 40, 50K per month is usually who we help. Anybody that has less than 5 or 10, it's just we can't really help. So our clients are typically the more experienced. And when they go elsewhere or when they were somewhere and they come to us, I always interview them and I always ask, how did it go? And they always say the same thing you said. I spent tens of thousands of dollars in many months, and their most common answer is 0. So I just want to stop right there, because this is the most common thing I hear. What you just said, and by the way, your story, that's the first time you told me that story, that you spent 50 and flipped 1 deal.
Mm-hmm.
But I hear this story all the time.
Right.
People have to understand that there's a distinction going on right now. I don't believe that PPC does work. And I want to say that clear. PPC does not work. So for all y'all that are going to go out there and do PPC, I just have reason to believe that its chance of success is low. You need to do PPC plus some stuff. And the plus some stuff is what we do. And what it is, it's about eliminating the errors over time. And that plus some stuff really matters. So back to the PPC doesn't work. Last year, I myself, with my business partner, we made $432,000 in Phoenix, Arizona in 2017 with either 41 or 43 transactions. I can't remember which. So that's important, because those are not the most amazing numbers in the whole wide world, but what it definitely does is paints a picture that PPC can work. It also suggests that PPC can work and that my partner and I were able to get it done in Phoenix, Arizona. But not only does PPC work, meaning what we do in GeoFlip, and not only did we do it in arguably one of the harder markets that exists in the United States, and we did it 5 years in a row, but we're now in over 20 states. And it works in all 20 states, and it works in every single city that we've tried. And if it doesn't work, it's almost always something else that has nothing to do with whether, quote unquote, PPC works or not. I mean, we had one guy in Salt Lake City who we just think wouldn't pick up the phone quick enough. And then when he said PPC doesn't work, and I asked, well, how long does it take for you to get to the phone or make outbound calls? You know, he wasn't really comfortable with that question. And I know why he wasn't comfortable with that question, because I said, if you don't pick up the phone inside 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4 or 5 minutes, PPC ain't gonna work. But see, it has nothing to do with PPC. That had to do with a failed coaching or a failed step. He just didn't believe me.
It's a failed system.
After 11 minutes, PPC does not work. So it doesn't work. You know, see, our numbers are so tight and so consistent, but that's because you just have to do it our way or else it doesn't work.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And we talked about that when we met last time, right? So that was one of the big talking points, is that response time. In the direct mail world, you have some lag time. You don't have to necessarily call them back right now, this second, because you know they're calling in on the phone. They got a letter in the mail. It just doesn't. It's not that applicable. But in SEO or any sort of online lead, they're searching on the internet and they're clicking on your link, and then they're clicking call or contact or filling out a form or whatever it is. And as soon as they fill that out, they want you to call them.
Yeah.
If you don't call them instantly, they're going to go to the very next website and they're going to, you know, click on theirs. And if they call, if whoever the next person they click on calls them, that's who they're going to sell to, right? Yeah. I mean, and so it's speed, right? So arguably that is the biggest step.
That step has to be super fast. It's probably the step in our chain, I think, that is the one that's most radically different than everything else all of us wholesalers have ever done. Because you do have latitude and some flexibility in direct mail. You know, there's most likely not 2 postcards on that person's kitchen counter. I mean, I've gone to kitchen counters and the house, and I've seen 5 postcards on the person's counter. I mean, I've seen that. I've seen 3 competitors. I mean, I know all the wholesalers in town. I've seen my buddies' cards on the refrigerator at houses I'm trying to, you know, and they've seen the same thing. So I know that stuff happens, but here's what's radically different about PPC is that when the motivated seller is on a screen, right? They look at the screen and then they fill out all the stuff. As soon as they fill out all the stuff, you have to put yourself in the head and the mind of the motivated seller who just submitted their information. And so here's the way I do onboarding with 100% of my clients. And we do a 1-hour onboarding call with every single one of our clients before we go live. And there's an entire section called the 10-minute rule. And then there's another section called the 5-minute rule, kill the 10-minute rule. And then there's another section, maybe paragraph, that says, I think the 0-minute rule is going to kill the 5-minute rule. If that's not intuitive, right? So what this means is as soon as somebody clicks and they fill out their information, you have to think about where their finger is. You have to think about where their mouse is. And then you have to think about where the mouse is on their screen. And the answer is it's 1 millimeter above and below your 2 competitors. In the space of PPC, their index finger is a millimeter away from the thing that clicks, a millimeter away from awesome competition. So see, that window, I think Google calls this the ZMOT, the zero moment of truth. It's essentially, I guess, the moment of time that a person decides whatever they're going to decide upon. Actually, I don't know exactly what it is, but it's in that moment. It's either where they decide or when they submit information. It's every second from that moment forward for engagement to begin with the vendor. And that moment, I think they call it the zero moment of truth. And that moment is under siege. The attention from a motivated seller, let me say that one more time. The people attempting to get the attention of the motivated seller is a whole new world, and people don't understand it. They don't understand it. I mean, when I say there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars in Silicon Valley, to try to get the motivated seller's attention, I really mean that. That's a truth. That's a real true thing.
I believe it. So, and that's a good segue to talk about cost. So, like I said, I spent $50,000 somewhere, give or take, I don't know, in that ballpark, trying to market online with very, very little success. So, what does it cost if somebody's thinking about getting into PPC, or they want to market online with GeoFlip, or they want to leverage you guys in your experience? I mean, what does it cost? What can somebody realistically expect to spend, and what type of results could they expect to get? And I'm sure it's different in every market. I know you had mentioned that it's, you know, you are in 20 states, so those states are going to be a bit different, right? Or no, they're pretty similar.
Well, I I don't want to confuse any of the listeners, but it may happen, so I'll do the best I can. We might be going through an adjustment in the way in which we approach our clients with pricing. So let me talk about our old pricing. We essentially used to have 3 pricing packages: $7,500 a month, $10,000 a month, or $25,000 a month. Nothing is beyond 30 days. So no contract for like a year or any of that stuff. It's just month to month. If we don't deliver, then we don't keep anybody contractually obligated, right?
Yep.
And those 3 figures, $7,500 a month, $10,000 a month, and $25,000 a month. Each of them has a certain amount of money that's our fee, and each of them has a certain amount of money that goes directly into the monsters that are going to own the world. Google. Google's going to own the world here pretty soon, right? So, for example, the $10,000 a month package, $4,000 of it was our fee. So each month, 4 would go to us, and 6 would go directly to Google and Bing for a total of $10,000. Now, I wanted to pause right there because there's something that I think this is one of the fundamental shifts in the market that I think we're making, and we're doing it quite well, is that there's this concept of old school and new school. Old school is it's vendor-vendee relationship. It's where somebody hires a vendor, expects to get a product or service, and there you go. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But you're an investor, and a good one at that. And I'm an investor, and I would say that I would suggest that fundamentally sound. And so a fundamentally sound investor is always trying to increase the return and decrease the risk. Fair statement?
Fair statement for sure. Yes.
The 2 rules by Mr. Warren Buffett. Rule number 1 is don't lose money, and rule number 2 is refer to rule number 1, right?
Right.
So let's just recount. I don't want to make you uncomfortable, okay?
No, yeah.
Best investors I know, really, yet you lost 50 grand. Well, you maybe spent 50 and let's say you made 10, and so you lost 40 on an investment decision, right? So that is the most common thing I see is smart investors losing money. So we just have to think about this. Why are so many smart investors losing money in PPC? And there's a reason for that. This is what drove me nuts, and I studied it, and I think I figured it out. We have a unique approach. The first, let's call it quarter, 90 days, is our goal is to establish benchmarks and reach a 1-to-1 return on investment. So if you spend 10 grand in month 1, and let's say you spend 10 grand in month 2, and 10 grand in month 3. I know this sounds crazy. Our goal is for you to have $30,000 in your pocket or more. I mean, more is better. 50, 90, or a million, of course. But there's a reason why we aim a certain way, because we're trying to de-risk it for our clients. The moment it's de-risked, which takes us about a quarter, and I can explain that too. The moment it's de-risked, or I should say we've optimized as best we can to minimize the risk as best we can, we make a bunch of changes, and it's substantial. And those changes, it now goes from validation, which is the goal in quarter number 1, a 1-to-1 return, to traction. And in the quarter number 2, we make a lot of optimization changes to try to drive profit up. And now we're aiming for 1-to-3 to 1-to-6. Okay, so quarter 1, we're looking for a 1-to-1 return on investment or better. And then quarter number 2, we're trying to hit a 1-to-3 to a 1-to-6 return or better. And then once we hit quarter number 2 and we validated and now we have traction, then it's just the eternal pursuit of optimization. Then it's just data. I mean, now it's really, we're going to win, because nobody can beat a big data or a proper, I don't think it's hard to beat a company that has dialed in their data and their feedback loop. And our feedback loop is just amazing. It's just so darn good. So we try to de-risk it first and then profit second. And your story is a good example. I hear your story all the time.
So, and my story really consisted of Google AdWords, Bing, and even Facebook marketing, which I didn't give it enough time. That's another thing with it as well. And I think a lot of investors suffer from this as also, right? So you are trying a new marketing channel and you drop a whole bunch of money and you don't get the return. So you said, nope, that doesn't work. Going back to my old side. That's exactly what I did. Direct mail is a tried and true. It's proven, it works. So when Google AdWords, pay-per-click, and Facebook marketing didn't work for me, and I dropped as much money as I did, I just went back to what worked. Now, as things continue to move forward, I have to go back and try. So did I lose, $40,000 essentially? I mean, kind of. but that's part of business.
You learn
You
to
have
earn.
to try things, right? You have to try things. You have to see whether it's going to work or not work and make the correct adjustment. So now I had case in point number one. I dropped $50,000 in this marketing channel and it didn't work.
Yeah.
But what am I doing now? Now I'm going back and I'm talking to you who has more information, more data, and more things that I'm confident that would work if I try to throw money at it again, right?
And here's the other key for you. And I know I already told you this, and it's probably not something that I should really like say to the world, but I'm just going to say it because it's how I feel. It's how I feel, it's how I think, and it's how we operate. Scott, we don't really care about our client's fee, meaning us making a profit. It's always the second thing. It's always the second most important thing. The first thing is their return on investment. See, if my client's return on investment is good, then by definition, our fee is always good. And so we know how to change things to make sure the ROI for our client is where it needs to be. And if it's not where it needs to be, we know the changes that have to happen over time to get them there. So your first 3 to 6 months with you, Scott, if you were to do something like this, one of the things I would say is that you always want to take the least risky approach that you can. And one of the ways to take the least risky approach that you can is to go find the sharpest vendor with the greatest track record and then follow their system. And that's really what we do. And one of the things we do when it makes sense, and I'll tell you an honest story that I really feel is important, is we don't mind adjusting our fee down to change your return on investment if there's a reason to do it. Let me give you a reason. We have a really good client, a guy that we like in another state, and he's a stud. He used to be an REO, like the REO king. He told me he'd done like 4,000 REOs in his state, and that's huge. I mean, that's right. And he's just a sharp guy. Well, about 3 months deep, he had made, I want to say, he had $104,000 total. He only had $25K in his back pocket from us, but he had another 70 or 80, whatever the math is, in escrow for a total of 104. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
I think he had spent around, don't quote me on this, but I think he had spent 25 in the first 90 days. He called us and said, PPC is not working. He said, I've made 25 grand, I've spent 25 grand, and that's a 1-to-1 ratio, and that's not very attractive or whatever. So here's what happened. When we reminded him that he had another 70 or 80K in escrow, he's like, oh yeah, I guess that's really good, but we got to the bottom of it. And I don't want to veil too much, but he was dealing with a family emergency. Somebody in his family was diagnosed with a possible terminal illness. The guy was just going through a life event, a life event. He was stressed. He was confused. People were flying into town. This is a good guy. He's a stud. He's a whale. He's trustworthy. But see, when he was making his emotional decisions, he was not in the right mindset, I don't believe, for him to make business decisions. He was making emotional decisions. When we got to the bottom of what was really going on, we said, dude, don't even worry about our fee. And we changed it. We basically made it nothing. And we said, we will wait for you because you're a good guy, you're a producer, and you're the right person that we want to build our company. So see, that's what I mean. It's like, I think that we're losing some of that touch. And I believe this guy, and it's just the right thing to do.
Well, and it goes back to your data, right? The data, I mean, if you like him as a person, and probably everybody out there that you're working with, it is, and we talked about this, it's very data reliant. People have to be truthful and be honest with what the results that you're giving them are, because there's no way for you to correct it unless they do so, right?
Yep. And let me touch on that when you get a sec.
Well, I was just going to say, I'm just thinking kind of out loud right now, there's really no reason not to start doing it now, because in order to really, this in Phoenix, this is a really hot part of the year. We're just brand new into 2019. January's been a phenomenal month so far this month. So, if we're trying to move forward here, the next 3 months are a good set of data to get, right?
Yep.
A lot of activity going on.
Yep.
Anyways, yeah, go ahead. Keep.
So another thing that we did that I don't know if it's innovative, but it's appreciated, is that part of our process that we created is this thing called the golden ratio. Now, I've talked about the golden ratio before. People have heard about it. What the golden ratio is it's basically a single page Excel spreadsheet that shows all the data. And that's the point I wanted to make, is transparency. So most marketers, at least this was my experience as a wholesaler. And remember, I'm a flipper and a wholesaler. I've bought everybody's product, or lots of them. And I know what works and what doesn't work. And I know what is gimmicky and I know what's not gimmicky. I mean, I bought that stuff too. And I was frustrated just like all of your listeners. You know, when you buy something that's shiny and its price is $97 or $9.97 or, you know, you better act now. I mean, there's nothing wrong with gimmicks and there's nothing wrong with getting people to take action. But there's a difference between selling people stuff and delivering value. And we really hold ourselves to deliver value. And one of the ways we do that is by making everything transparent. So in the golden ratio, all the numbers that we're responsible for and all the numbers that our client is responsible for every week is on one line. And everybody calls in and everybody looks at that one line and everybody can see our performance on what we're supposed to be doing. And then we can see their performance on what they're supposed to be doing. Because Scott, this is far more a JV partnership than a vendor-vendee relationship.
It has to be. It must be.
It has to be because this is just tough. You know, one of the things I recently learned is that if you're married, but the first time you get in a fight, you just decide, okay, I'm going to divorce. You know, you can't do that. You got to have a little bit of staying power. You got to kind of stay in there and work on the level of discomfort. And what I find is that the level of discomfort that exists with relation to vendor-vendee relationships, one of the areas that comes from is the lack of transparency. And so what we do is we put all of our cojones on the table, so to speak. And so if we drop the ball with what we're supposed to do, which is all the things that, you know, that is agreed upon before the service starts, so our clients know what's going on, they get to see what our standards are or what we're responsible for. And we get to see what they're responsible for. And so there is no dispute if somebody's dropping the ball. If GeoFlip drops the ball, everybody sees it that week. You know, you don't wait a month and then question what happened. Everybody says like, hey, GeoFlip, you only delivered this many leads or the click-through rate's this. What's up with that? And see, we take accountability because we know that if there's some poor numbers on our side for 2 or 3 or 4 weeks, that just means that the leads are going to be bad, which means our client's not going to make money, which means the ROI goes down, which means we lose a client, which means retention goes down. And our goal is to retain clients. We don't make a lot of money on our clients. I mean, it might sound like thousands of dollars per month, but people don't understand how expensive data is or data processing, data analysis. That stuff costs money. And so we only make money if clients stick around. So my most important thing is my client's ROI. Because if my client has a high ROI, the retention goes up, and retention is what we're here for. What we need is a business.
Right. And the value proposition that you're bringing to the table on that is so massively huge. It's not even, you can't even question that, right? Because if you're willing to take a lower fee to provide a ton of value to therefore keep your client around for the long run, then you'll make your money on the back end. Then, I mean, who can argue with that? Everybody's here to get paid, but you know, they're here. When people sign up for a service like what you're delivering, you want value. You want somebody to bring value. So, you know, to wrap it all up, it sounds like, I mean, GeoFlip is something that is a bit, you know, I guess I wouldn't say it's totally, what is the word I'm going for? Like innovation, because Google AdWords has been around, but it's the way that you're operating within that space that is an innovation.
Now, I wanted to mention a couple quick what we call wins of the week of some of our clients, because I need people to sort of hear just a couple quick stories if you got a sec.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Get in it.
One of my guys at my company, Kevin, who's a great kid, I asked him to we started doing this thing called wins of the week. So every single week, we review every single deal, every single lead, every single call, every single text, every single chat, everything with every single client, every single time. This is why stuff costs money, because we really analyze. So as a result, one of the benefits we get is we get to hear about some of the wins of the week of some of our clients. So January 18th, some of you guys know, let's see, in Phoenix, Justin Colby, they're off to an amazing start. They just closed it, 2 weeks ago, they closed a $25K deal. They also locked up 2 more deals in escrow. One is $22,500. Another one is $20,000. So they're going to do 60 or whatever this month in PPC with our stuff. We got another guy named Seth Choate. Our guy Seth is a stud. He locked up 2, sold 2 more deals, locked up another one at 20, and then he's got another assignment at 8. Another one is Andre I think Andre's in Houston, I believe. These guys, and he's a superstar. In the first 3 weeks, he's already got 2 deals in escrow. He's going to net $20K each. And other good stuff, it doesn't matter. In Tucson, we've got a guy that, let's see, he just put a deal in escrow for $30K. He's got a flip for $50K. And it looks like he's got one AB. We call them ABs, which means a deal that's going into escrow. It's the front end. It looks like it says it's $80,000 going to happen in 45 days. I mean, it's insane. Our best client last year, I want to give props to Anthony Epps. And Anthony, I hope you hear this because you took a chance on us and we took a chance on you. And that guy made $600,000 last year with us.
Yep, Anthony Epps is an awesome guy out there. And the funniest part is, and not to cut you off, but the first three people that you just talked about, we're all in the same mastermind together. It's a lot of fun. Bunch of really good guys. So anyways, back at it.
Yeah, so to put it in, and we lead with numbers. We don't lead with stories. We lead with numbers. And when people say, hey, show me the numbers, let's do that. But I need a private setting. I can't be sending this stuff out because these are people's private financials. But all my clients know that I'm very careful about how we go about some of these stories because it's more testimonial than anything. But we get backup on all these. We see all the numbers. We talk to our clients. In some cases, we even ask for settlement statements. Anthony Epps spent, I'm just going to ballpark $100,000 last year on us, and he made just shy of 600. So everybody do the math. It's a 1-to-5 to a 1-to-6 ratio. Lots of our clients are there. So when people say PPC doesn't work, and I've been doing it for 5 years, and now we're in 20 states, I mean, and it really just means the numbers speak for themselves. So when people decide to abandon a conversation, leaving the context of numbers, rational, and logic, and they want to become emotional and story-driven, it makes tough. But the other people that are in the country that are hearing this message, that are like, dude, I'm all about the numbers, and I'm all about the system, and I am an experienced investor. You know, those are the kind of people that we want to work with, and we only need, you know, we don't really take on a lot of clients. We look for we look for the Anthony Epps of the world. We look for the Justin Colbys of the world. We look for the Scott Bowers of the world. We look for good people who care and are going to, in a divorce, if you have a fight, you know, you still are married. And we're looking for some people that are willing to do some of that.
Right, and that's huge. And you know what, Bilbro, you have shared a ton of information. I'm sure the listeners are intrigued and excited kind of about what GeoFlip might be able to offer. And just for the sake of time, which we are coming up on time, let's transition into a lightning round. Are you gonna be ready for lightning round here in about 2 minutes?
Yeah, let's do it, man.
Okay. So, and just kind of recap kind of what you talked about. I mean, going from the flipping side of real estate here in Phoenix, like you said, arguably one of the hottest markets in the country, to buying a bunch of stuff in the ramp up 06 through 09, and then losing it all and having to restart again in 09. Building up this GeoFlip company where you're basically targeting online motivated people to find off-market deals, and really utilizing technology to gain the edge. That's exactly what you're doing, and doing it very transparently, right? I mean, it's totally changed kind of everything that you've gone through in order to get there. A couple of testimonials from the clients you're working with, and just kind of your devotion to making sure that your clients succeed, I think is unmatched, and it's admirable. So thank you for sharing that. But
I appreciate that, man.
Anyways, back to the lightning round. You ready for it?
Do it.
All right, man. What is your hashtag invest this tip to keep our listeners moving forward, if you were to give one?
So is the question about a hashtag, or what's the investment tip?
Yeah, so that invest this is the podcast, right? So what is a tip that you can give to the listeners to have them invest into their life and their business so they keep moving forward?
I'm going to do something. I'm going to go off the wall and suggest something a little different, because this has changed me big time.
Let's hear it.
So I created this thing called Bilbro's Autodidactions, which is just a fancy word for self-taught. And one of the things I did, I'm not a big reader. I'm a moderate reader. I'm becoming less of a reader and more of a thinker. So one of the things I'm doing is reading some stuff or being inspired by people, or even guys like you or just anybody. And then what I do is I have these big pieces of paper. I don't know if I've got any around the house, but I've got these big pieces of paper. Actually, let me show you. Like this.
Yep.
What I do is, and I've got just tons of, and I got them all over the house, and I got lots of Sharpies. And man, when I get up and I'm inspired, or if I disagree with something, or if I got a question with something, I write that thing down, and then I noodle on it, because I'm passionate about trying to get to the root of whatever that thing is. And these autodidact actions, I think it through, it stays up on the wall, and sometimes it'll be a week. And as I work through it, I really get to the fundamental understanding of whatever that thing is. So I'm literally teaching myself. And it's just different. I mean, I know it sounds kind of goofy, but I'm like learning complicated things that I never would have known to do or known how to do. And it's just a simple little tip by writing stuff on the wall and then staying focused on it. When I can't break that thing and it's smarter than me, or it's just I can't figure it out, I really don't quit. I let that thing fester, and it frustrates me because I don't know everything, obviously. That's been one of the biggest game changers for myself in about the last year.
Man, that's huge. That is massive. I heard of a similar strategy. I forget what the exact terminology for it is, but basically where you take Post-it notes and you put it on your mirror that you look at every single day.
Yeah.
And every day you're coming back to it, you're revisiting it, and you're thinking about it, and it makes it just, you know, whatever you're thinking about, wherever your focus goes, energy flows. So, you know, I would say that you're just saying the tip is to teach yourself, continue to keep learning, right?
And it works for me. Like, this worked. Not everything works for everybody. I am absorbing more information and learning things quicker and faster. It's fun. I get it. I actually understand the fundamentals of stuff rather than the cursory, superficial level of things. I also am studying the things I love.
Right.
So that has really been a game changer for me.
Now, you just said that you're not a fast reader, but you like to continue to read. Do you have a favorite book that has been life-changing for you, something that has been very impactful, either in your life, in your business, or both?
I mean, so many good books.
Right.
In my little email that I was going to send you, here's another thing that I want to suggest with your book is I said in my bio that I've read hundreds of books. I have not read hundreds of books. I actually decided to go count all the books in my house to see how accurate or inaccurate I was in my thought of how many books I've read. Answer, I have 111 books. I've probably only read, I'm guessing, 80 or 90 of them. So I've not read hundreds and hundreds of books. But something I've done is there's some books that I just really know some sections. Like there's parts of books that became my identity. I know that information and can teach that information. I can memorize that information. I can regurgitate that information, or I've made that information in a book, and it's just a chapter or a paragraph. I don't remember everything. I remember almost nothing. But of all the books I've read, I'm going to guess 80 or 90 that are at least at the house. Maybe there's more. Cash flow quadrants changed my life, dude.
Yeah.
That thing punched me right in the nose, and it gave me the information and the lesson that I had to have at the right time. And it was all about business model. Cash flow quadrants is not a miraculous book, but it was the right message for me at the right time because I was busy trying to be an employee. And if you don't understand the pros and cons of each of the cash flow quadrant respective fields, if you will, you'll just be stuck in E or stuck wherever you're at. And man, as soon as that thing clicked instantly, if you saw me on a chart, I mean, boom, my income and everything just started going.
Absolutely.
Went everywhere. Yeah.
And for those of you out there, so it's Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow quadrant. He basically explains the 4 different quadrants to the cash flow quadrant, which on the left side is the employee and self-employed, and on the right side is the business owner and the investor, and the pros and cons and how they spend their money, what they spend their money on, how they put money in different assets to actually pay them, the difference. And if you do read the book, if you haven't already, I highly recommend it. It will change your life. Yeah.
And right now I'm reading a book on called Nudge by some behavioral economics guys that's blowing me away too. That book is just, I can't get enough of it.
So I ordered it when we met the other day, and it just arrived at my house. I have not started reading it yet, but it's sitting right on my desk, and I will start reading it. When I do, I'll make sure to let you know.
Can I plug that book real quick? I mean, do you have a sec?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not selling anything. It's just, this changed me as well. The entire economic world was built on this concept of the rational actor. So like when we're investors, we're always trying to make more money in less time. That's pretty rational. But what this book talks about, and it's the science behind it, and these dudes won a Nobel Prize, so they're no goofballs. They essentially proved, at least this is my understanding, that, we're irrational actors. And it's an irrational world. And if every economic model that has ever been built was built on the presupposition that the person is always going to make the right decision with full information and ample amount of time and all angles understood and all these other things, then that's a rational, logical actor. But this is not how we make decisions, and this is not how business goes down. In fact, constantly, all day, every day, ourselves and others we behave and think irrationally, yet defend ourselves as being rational. And that's the key. I have now seen numerous examples where my clients do and or say things that are factually wrong and numerically wrong. But I hear their tone and I understand what they're thinking. And now it makes sense. They're in an emotional state and they've abandoned the rationality. And so that's the output. And so one of the things I'm doing with this book is to better understand that, because we all do this as well. So that book, it's called Nudge, and like you nudge somebody. It's just a really interesting book. It's kind of changing my understanding of how to do sales and build my company.
I'm really excited to actually dive in and read it. It's not a small book, and it looks like it could be kind of complex, one that you want to read over time, slowly, so you really understand it. But I am excited about that. So I appreciate you sharing that with me before. What about a quote? Have you heard a quote? Is there a special quote that stands out to you?
Gosh, I have like all kinds. You notice I'm looking over my house at all kinds of stuff I write to myself.
Hey man, whatever you're surrounded with, whatever you're looking at all the time is what you're going to turn into, right? So
this is not really a quote. It's a thought I've been thinking about. And I think Jordan Peterson said that, which, by the way, everybody, I believe, needs to expose themselves to the communication style of Mr. Jordan Peterson.
I'm
that
looking
guy
at
is a lightning rod with language. Other than Sam Harris, and those two guys, I don't know. They're the two most eloquent, sophisticated speakers I've ever heard in my life. And I can just hear them speak, and the way in which they piece together thought and they phrase, it's just on another level. Well, one of the things that I think Jordan Peterson said, they were talking about something in the whatever, and he just said, well, sure, there's a wealth gap, and we all know there's a wealth gap. But what the science and what maybe the layman's are not really able to appreciate as much is the opportunity gap and the education gap. And those things lead to things like wealth gaps. And that kind of just changed me, because I kind of thought, man, how many opportunities am I not providing for people in my company? And how many opportunities and how many times could they have an educational piece just give them a better opportunity and a better platform for them to create their wealth. And so that concept, it's not a quote, it's just a concept that I've been thinking about to help build my company and the people around me.
You know, it's huge. It's got my mind. Every time we talk, man, you get my mind just spinning, right? Because it's absolutely true. The opportunity cost, or it's not even.
Yeah, it's wealth gap versus opportunity gap. And he went deeper, but that one just kind of got me. And I'm just thinking, man, how many opportunities can I create today that I don't even have to tell my crew? I can just create an opportunity and let them fall forward into the successfulness of that opportunity.
Right. Yeah. Very massive. Thanks for sharing that, man.
Yeah.
What about giving back? You're successful. I'm successful. We've all been very successful in this business. Real estate has changed lives, right?
Yeah.
How do you like to give back?
This is going to maybe be a story that it's a heavy story, because it's something that I just can't not think of. And so this is a true story. I mean, it just is what it is. So I have a cousin, an adopted cousin in Texas, and her husband is going through, I think he had a stroke a couple months ago. I believe they have 5 kids. I don't know this side of my family really well, but I mean, I've known of them for a long time, but just never had like family reunions or any of that stuff. And my cousin called me, and at the time we hadn't talked very much. But what I found out through the conversation is that the husband is going through a stroke. And so we were talking about that, because I'm familiar with like fitness, nutrition. Stroke and cardiovascular disease are both man-made diseases as far as I'm concerned. And it's just a travesty that people have them at all. But that's a different thing. I was helping her understand how to just improve his fitness nutrition. And that bled over into her, which then that bled over into the 5 kids, which then bled over to me flying down there 2 weeks ago to help them move from their first house to another house, because they got to get closer to the family. Well, what I realized is these people also could really using the cash flow quadrants, they could really use a little bit of love in the S category. And so I don't know what my pattern of giving back has been or is. I mean, I help anybody all the time, and I give stuff away, and I teach stuff. And I mean, we just, but these people, my cousin and her husband and those kids, They're like the perfect story, and they're hungry to go from wherever they're at to pull them and put themselves and their kids on the right path and towards college and all that other good stuff. And right now, unless somebody intervenes, that's just not going to happen. Like, it's not going to happen if I don't do it. So this is not a very good answer. All I can say, dude, is I'm single track focused. Like, I just want to figure out how to get down there and help teach them the way. But they're dealing with moving and medical and kids and new schools and whatever. But dude, this is just on my mind. It's like, I got to help these people and they want to.
Just trying to help them. I mean, that's family. You're trying to put them in the right path. So I think that's a great way to give back. And I mean, you mentioned, I think we give back all the time. There might not be one specific thing, donate to a charity necessarily one per se every month, or go donate your time necessarily every month, but you're doing things that are giving back to other people and changing lives for other people. Would you agree to that? Yeah.
And I think the key is, like, we sometimes get tricked that giving $50 to Red Cross or whatever. I mean, I'm not against any of those things. So do those things. But there's just a difference between, like, rolling up your sleeves and making something happen that was not going to happen. That's different. And so I've given $50 to Red Cross, and I've done an hour at the thing, and I've given blood to the thing. I mean, I've done those things, but those just no longer move me. They don't even do anything for me.
Yeah.
So now I'm thinking, man, how do I get myself into a situation where at the end of that situation, people will know there was blood and sweat and tears to make that thing happen. And that's kind of how I feel right now. I just feel that this is a better way to deliver a charitable help. And I mean, this is a charity for my family. I want to teach them stuff, but I just feel like really taking ownership and moving the needle is the way to do it. Not throw $50 at a thing to make yourself feel good.
You're like actual impact and actual change. It's $50 doesn't do anything. Right?
Yeah, you just got to do it once. I mean, if you change one I know everybody says that, but I mean literally change somebody's life where they were not good and now they're good and they're good forever. Like, saving one person or helping one person in your life, to me, that's a win, dude. That's a really good win. As long as it's a notable, it's got to be a real one. And that's what's getting me right now.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, Bilbro, you shared so much good stuff on this call, man. Like I said, every time I talk to you, every time we have a conversation, we could talk for hours. We really could on a lot of different levels. Thanks, how can the listeners reach you? If they want to learn more about either GeoFlip, they want to learn more about you, whatever it might be, where can they find you?
Yeah, probably the best and easiest thing would be go to GeoFlip.com. Yeah, GEO, just like geography, flip, FLIP. So geoflip.com, and we have information. You guys everybody can call us. If you're interested in doing anything with us, my recommendation would be the very first step in the upper right-hand corner of GeoFlip. There's a button called See If You Qualify. It's about a 10-minute questionnaire is all it is. And all it's doing is trying to figure out where a person's at in their business, what their pain points are, and where they want to go. And I have to have that information because every investor is so different. There's guys that are all over the board in other cities and whatever. So that's the best thing. When people fill out the See If You Qualify button, it gives us everything, and we can start with an intelligent, data-driven conversation. We don't sell stuff, Scott. There's no reason to sell stuff. There's no selling. Here's the ratio, here's the numbers, here's the risk, here's how it works. Let's get to work. And so that piece starts the conversation, and it removes the salesman from everything. And now we get to brass tacks. What was your cost per deal? What was your total number of leads? What is your closing ratio? And if you don't know those things, well, you're gonna, because that's what GeoFlip makes it. You have to know those things. So that's the best place to go. GeoFlip and see if you qualify.
Awesome. Sounds good, man. Well, you should probably, I would assume, get some sort of traction from somebody reaching out with some questions or wanting to get involved. So with that being said, man, Bilbro, thanks for being here. Really appreciate it.
You're the man. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Yep. We'll talk to you real soon, man. See ya.
Make sure to like, subscribe, and share this podcast to help us spread the word. Go ahead and reach out to Scott Bauer on all the social media outlets for suggestions on topics and guests for the show. And check out investthispodcast.com for more secrets and resources to achieve real success in real estate.